Welcome to The Weekly, a podcast for in-house counsel, with host Richard Levick.
Good day. This is Richard Levick with The Weekly, the podcast for the in-house community. And with me today is Charles Keller, a doctor who's the director of the Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute. Charles, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Tell us a little bit about this charity. It's a little unusual. Here we are in a show for general counsels, and we're talking with a nonprofit, not about legal issues, but about scientific ones.
Well, exactly. So childhood cancer is one of the great success stories. It has a 80% cure rate, up from 5% just in the mid-60s. But there's still 1 in 5 children that face a struggle to survival. And so our goal as a nonprofit biotech is to move basic science discoveries to the start of clinical trials.
And you're the charity of choice, if you will, for the in-house community.
Yeah, we're very grateful for their support. They had a fundraiser last year that supported us, and again this year.
How did you get started in this? What was we were talking pre-show, and you were talking about your interest in urology. What happened?
Yeah, well, sure. I was certain I was going to be a surgeon scientist, but my first rotation in medical school was on the pediatric oncology ward. There were interesting problems, but the thing that was most inspiring is these kids, just as soon as they get feeling slightly better, they're out there playing again. And it just seemed like the right place and the right people to try to help.
What do you think's happening now? It would seem like Children's Cancer and Recovery would be the number one charity for so many organizations in the front of so many of our minds, but it's not.
Well, it's rare, right? So there might be 1.7 million cancers in North America alone each year. Only 16,000 of those will be childhood cancers. So it's a very small percent. It's not a big market to develop drugs for.
And what can companies do? How can they get the word out and assist in what it is that you're trying to do?
Oh, wow. Well, the internal champion, that person who at the right moment says, well, about childhood cancer, it means everything. Great things happen from the kindness of strangers and internal champions.
We'll be quoting movies the entire rest of the episode, so I'm so glad that you brought in A Streetcar Named Desire. Talk about, if you will, the number of cancer drugs that are for the rest of the population versus what's available in terms of new developments for children.
Right. So there's certainly an international scope of this, but if you just use the U.S. example, 12 drugs are so effective at extending and saving the life of adults with cancer each year to earn FDA approval. But for kids, there have been 8 since 1978. So 8 in 42 years for kids, 12 every year for adults.
So just in 3/4 of a year, the number of drugs that are approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration equals that has been approved by the FDA for children in nearly half a century.
Well, that's true.
So what should, as the general counsel of a company, what should we be doing? We're looking at our corporate social responsibility, particularly post-pandemic. We want to probably do an audit of that and think how we can be more strategic, more focused. What should they be thinking, and what should they be thinking in terms of the work that you do?
Well, thanks for asking that. So if people work in the pharmaceutical industry, talking about the pediatric indications of drugs to meet regulatory requirements would be fabulous. There's actually some incentives, the pediatric priority review voucher that gives you an opportunity to make an extra $90 million. But from the corporate cause marketing point of view, one can also help. Who wouldn't want to help kids with cancer? That's a fabulous cause to let your employees know that you care, to let the public know that you care. So teaming up with an organization such as ours for a corporate cause marketing campaign could be just an immense amount of fun, especially if you get to hear about the research that's happening every week.
This is probably an unfair question, but do you sometimes feel that audiences, as critical and important as breast cancer research is and how effective their Pink Ribbon campaign, it's everywhere, but sometimes there's a little exhaustion with it in the sense that it crowds out some of the other equally worthy causes and diseases?
Right. So there's always that question: are we competing for charity dollars, or are we all out there together working on similar good causes? We like to think at CC-TDI that what we're trying to do is show how much success we can have and how much more we could have by scaling that.
Charles, in the final 30 seconds or so that we have for the audience, what's the bottom line takeaway you'd like to leave with the general counsels?
Oh gosh. So addressing childhood cancer is a noble cause that requires a community, and most importantly, for an in-house community that has been supporting us and making our research this last year possible. We're quite grateful.
Dr. Charles Keller, the director of the Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute, thank you so much for your time. I'm Richard Levick with The Weekly, and we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to The Weekly, a podcast for in-house counsel. If you like what you've heard, please rate and subscribe to The Weekly on your favorite podcasting platform.